Well, good afternoon, everyone. We have a whole If you could please go ahead and silence your cell phones at this time, that would be very helpful. Good afternoon and welcome to today's candidate forum. Before we get started, my name is Jafre. For those I have not met yet, I am the chair for 2022. I'm also a realtor with Century 21 Millbrash. At this time, will you please join me in a round of applause to thank our staff and volunteers for helping with today's program, and to thank our chamber executive. A special thank you to today's forum series presenting sponsors, Matherly State Bank. Thank you to Matherly Bank for the round of applause. Will you please rise and join me for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like Lisa to come up and help us introduce any new or any new members.
Thanks, Jen. We would like to give a big welcome to Fairbanks Urology. They are one of our newest members. And they are here to help provide urology patients with a happy and healthy life through healing, education, and quality care. They just moved into their new location at 1211 Christian Street. And we also have Fairbanks Clinic as well. They are a family-oriented practice that is home to a group of experienced practitioners who are skilled in preventative and diagnostic care for patients of all ages. And then NAMI of Fairbanks, the National Alliance of Mental Health Illness, provides support, education, and advocacy for people experiencing psychiatric disabilities, their families, friends, and interested community members. Our list of renewing members continues to be strong. We have JNC Studios, Page Filter Studios, East Ramp Woodfire Pizza, Lodge, the Regency Alley, Tyga Ventures, Canna Valley Farmers Market, and Valerie Darian as an individual member. And a special thanks for those that joined the 110% Club. That would be Alaska West Express, Legacy Funeral Homes, Mecca Bar, Holland Environmental, Golden Cart Waste Management, and then a big thank you to our executive partners that have renewed at the silver level. That would be Riverside, Fairbanks North River, Riverside Division, and the last silver level. So thank you so much for those members. Please join me in thanking them as well. Thank
you, Lisa. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce today's forum moderator today. She is the Senior Vice President of Human Resources and Marketing at the Matherly State Bank. Please help give a warm chamber welcome to Victoria.
Thank you, Jen. It's certainly my pleasure to moderate today's forum. The candidates with us today are all seeking to serve us in the Alaska State House and Senate. For brief introductions, we have from our left to right, candidates for House Seat 31, Maxine Dibert, Representative Bart, LeBon, and Kelly Nash, and for House Seat 32, Van Lawrence and Will Stapp. Timothy Gibbons is also vying for House Seat 32 and was invited to participate but was unable to attend today. Finally, candidates for Senate Seat P, Alex Jafre, Senator Scott Kawasaki, and Mayor Jim Matherly. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to offer our appreciation to the candidates joining us here today. And may I ask the audience for a round of applause and appreciation for your willingness to serve in public office. The Fairbanks Chamber is a nonpartisan organization that is proud to be the leading voice advocating for community by supporting business prosperity in the interior. Our goal today is to help you in the audience make an informed decision as you cast your vote on election day, November 4th, or any time through early voting. Now let's do a quick review of our format. Candidates will be asked a series of questions, both open-ended and yes or no. Candidates will also have the opportunity to ask their opponent a question. And finally, as time allows, we'll take as many questions from the audience as possible. To those in the audience, if you have a question, please complete one of the question cards on your table. Fold it up, and one of our volunteers will collect it from you. As a final wrap-up, each candidate will get 1 minute for closing remarks. Before I turn my attention to the candidates, I ask the audience to please respect our candidates and the chamber by refraining from any responses throughout the forum, and to please hold your applause until the conclusion of the forum. This allows us the maximum time possible to hear from the candidates on the important issues facing our community. Now to the candidates. I'd like to give you just a few last minute instructions before we begin. You'll notice a countdown clock on the screen in front of you, which indicates how much time you have for your answer. Please stop talking when your time has expired. As I ask each question, I will indicate which of you will answer first. I will also tell you how long you have to provide an answer. With that, let's get started. We'll begin with a 60-second response to our first question, hearing from Ms. Dibert, followed by Representative LeBon, and so forth. The permanent fund dividends has been a political hot potato since 2019 and has distracted lawmakers from discussing and passing other legislation needed to improve the business climate in Alaska. What is your plan to finalize the annual debate surrounding the PFD so that the legislature and the administration can focus on promoting a healthy business environment in Alaska? 60 seconds.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Growing up here in Fairbanks, the PFD has been a part of my entire life here. It has been there for my family as a child. It's been there for me and my kids, and I want it for my children and their families far into the future. If elected, if I go to Juneau, I will have 3 priorities regarding the PFD. Number 1, I would protect the permanent fund, no raids on the permanent fund. Number 2, I would pay the maximum PFD that we can afford. And number 3, I would, the permanent fund needs to be used to pay for essential services in our community of Fairbanks, District 41, like infrastructure, education, and public safety. And that's,
thank you. Representative LeBon.
Thank you. And sustainability is a key word on the PFD program. Is it sustainable in relationship to the value of the Alaska Permanent Fund itself? And does it meet the reasonable needs and wants of all Alaskans? It's one thing to advocate for a maximum PFD while at the same time expecting roads to be plowed, a trooper to respond if you call 911. Essential state services need to be met. So the debate will continue, I suspect, and I doubt that it'll be resolved here in the 33rd legislature unless you can get 21 House members and 11 senators to agree on a formula. And in my 4 years down in Juneau, that hasn't happened. So I'm not optimistic it will happen, but I am optimistic that PFD will continue to be paid each and every year.
Thank you. Ms. Nash.
Hi, thank you for having me. There's already an original statute for our PFD. We follow the law, the original statute, 50% to the people, 50% to the state. I don't understand where the confusion is. They've been diving into our portion, loaded budgets. I honestly don't know what the answer is, but I'm hoping that there are, I actually know there are a lot of people out there that can help have their 2 cents to be put in. I know that there are legislators now that have voted against the full PFD, they've voted against the full back pay, and there's definitely something that needs to be looked at. As a small business owner, I know that it's completely affected my business, because when PFDs come out, the whole entire family comes out to get their hair done. In the last 2 years, it hasn't happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bart.
The permanent fund dividend is vital to the people in this state. A good 30 or 40% of the people that helps bring them out of poverty. So I recognize the importance of the dividend, but the permanent fund in many respects is even more important. It brings revenue to fund state government, far as well as funding the dividend, when I'm in Juneau, I will work to, make the dividend be as large as the fund can afford. And, I don't want to waive the dividend, the permanent fund. I would, look to the long term and try to reach a consensus with the legislators to come up with a formula that, achieves both goals.
Thank you. Mr. Stapp.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, to have me here at the Chamber of Commerce Forum. Well, I believe in good governance and good governance. So I tell folks, you should follow the law or you should change the law regarding the dividend. So the problem that the state has had historically is most of our revenues have been drawn from oil. And recently, because of the collapse in oil price, our state had to tap the permanent fund dividend in order to fund services for residents. So I don't have any issue if the state needs the revenues in order to fund essential government services. However, it's bad government to leave statutes on the books that you don't have any intention to follow. And I think if you're going to run for office, you should try to be upfront with folks and tell them that in the event that you have to change the law regarding the dividend, that you should have the political courage to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jafre.
Yes, we have a statute on the books already. We have thousands of dollars stolen from people who can ill afford it. This is gonna hurt the guy who owns a yacht, who owns the chain of a hotel. This is gonna hurt the poor and the elderly and the disabled who can ill afford it. And I don't think it's fair to them to balance the budget on the back of the lowest and weakest members of society. It is not right.
Thank you. Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you. I just agree with folks that I'm glad to be here to speak to you today. I'll say that I was part of a group that was duly elected between the House and Senate majority and minority caucuses last 2 years ago. We spent all summer working on a proposal, and we had conservative members and liberal members from across the state, urban and rural. We came up with a proposal that worked, and what it took was it took the rest of the legislators to vote on it. It took us 3 months in Juneau, and actually it didn't work out to come to fruition. It included a permanent fund dividend that was sustainable. It included a broad-based tax that would incorporate perhaps a sales tax. We did not approve the governor's annual tax. I'll say this too, that I also agree with my colleague, Mr. Jafre, that to find revenue to pay for services, the PFD only hurts a certain group of people, and we can't do that.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
Thank you. You know, as mayor, I had to make a city budget, and I had to make sure that our services were met. Trash, garbage, you know, I had to make sure the roads were cleared, fire department was fully funded. I think if the state fully funds those adequately for the whole state, and we're talking about some areas of the state that don't even have a police officer, and some that don't even have a school. I think those are vitally important. So I think if you can sustain those, then you can pay the largest PFD you can. My intention would be to go down with it and work with everybody, just like I work on the city council with both sides. I'm not an expert on it yet, but I will become an expert. And I will work with everybody that I can to make sure that it's protected, but also our vital services to the state are also protected. And fully funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will receive a 45-second response, beginning first with Mr. Lawrence. What are the challenges to developing more value-added industries in Alaska? And is there anything the legislature can do to encourage more processing of our natural resources in Alaska? 45 seconds, Mr. Lawrence.
Well, I guess maybe the biggest challenge is the economies of scale, which is one of the least populated states in the country. And economics, I think, requires in many cases, numbers to make it economical. One of the proposals I would make would be increase manufacturing in the state, which there is a fair amount of manufacturing in this community that people don't know about. But I think we should help manufacturing companies to either get created or increased their size by, funding municipalities to have them, give property tax breaks to those companies that, are in manufacturing.
Thank you. Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of corporate subsidies. The biggest challenge that the state has currently when it comes to value-added services is clearly operating with capital costs, mainly due to the problem that the interior has with the cost of energy. So if you want to talk about state investment that's driven for delivering cheap and affordable energy to the interior will have the adverse effect of lowering capital costs and operating costs for businesses, which in turn allows the private sector to do what they do best, which is invest and make things, which is going to consider to be value-added services. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jafre.
Yes, I think one of the first things we should do is cut back on a lot of over-regulation of red tape and high taxes a lot of these companies have to deal with. It's hard to develop when you can't maintain enough of a profit margin.
That works and that will make the stability of our infrastructure plan work, and we could bring if elected, I would bring infrastructure dollars here to the interior, to the city of Fairbanks, so that we could bring jobs as well.
Thank you. Representative LeBon.
Yeah, 2 words, transportation and cost of energy. But let's talk about transportation. Access to essential rare earth minerals is vital to Alaska's future. Value added to mining. We need to build the Amber Road project to access Amber Mining District. And we need to build the Susitna Road to access minerals in that area. An example, we have a local example of how that works. It's called Fort Knox. They add value from the ground, and it's called gold bars. And aren't we all so pleased that Fort Knox does business in this borough?
Thank you. Ms. Nash.
I actually have to completely agree with everything Bart said. Copycat everything that he just said. Our resources, they need to stay here in our state. We need to stop selling them off to other countries. We need to worry about our own people in our state, where we live, where we work, where we raise our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our first set of candidate to candidate questions, and we will begin with the candidates running for Senate seat P. Mr. Jafre, you can now ask one of your opponents, Senator Kawasaki or Mayor Matherly, your question. You'll have 15 seconds to ask your question, and then the candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. Mr. Jafre.
Given the issue we've had recently with nonprofits getting away with all kinds of uses of power, and your inaction on the blockade and continue to do that, why did we put you in jail?
Mr. Jafre, can you address which candidate? Candidate 30 seconds, Mr. Matherly.
Yeah, when Mr. Jaffe approached me about the issue of SWAT, I made it very clear, I don't run their board. I told him there was an issue with the play on the SWAT board that the board of directors will deal with it. As a mayor, I just can't go strong arming nonprofit boards. I told him I couldn't do it. So that's the best answer I can give you. I have no control over SWAT. I think they took care of their own organization, but you can still trust me because I don't run their board. As a mayor, that's overreach. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Senator Kawasaki, you have the same opportunity to ask either Mr. Jaffe or Mayor Matherly your question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And I'll ask candidate Matherly because he brought it up. Public safety is something that's important to Fairbanks. Ensuring that we've got a strong public safety workforce is important. When I was a member of the city council 20 years ago, there were 47 deputized officers. There's now 32 deputized officers in the city, even though the city's growing. What have you done to increase the number of officers and why has it been?
Well, I think you should the word fail. I mean, it's tough being a cop in the last 5 years. I mean, you didn't have to face the same issues that, nationally plagued all of our police officers across the state. We've actually incentivized people, we pay big bonuses and stuff, but not everybody is a perfect fit. So we're always gonna be looking for more. And our numbers have increased. When we were on the city council, we didn't have as many calls for service as we do now too. So there's been a lot more challenges with the police department, and we still work to get them fully funded. Thank you.
Now, Mayor Matherly, your turn. Please address your question to either Senator Kawasaki or Mr. Jafre. 15 seconds to ask the question.
Thank you. This is for Senator Kawasaki. Because we're a chamber of commerce and we support small business, in 2010, there was an Alaska Business Report Card that was issued. Every 2 years, since its inception, they have rated Senator Kawasaki an F. All 4 times and 1 minus. Why is that?
Thank you. The business report card basically grades you on one of 2 things: where you stand on oil taxes and where you stand on the budget. And I can say right now that this year, I've received a lot of endorsements from a lot of different groups that support small business. I just got a check from the Associated General Contractors. I know the Board of Fairbanks Board of Realty just gave me a check and endorsed my campaign. I've got half a dozen other endorsements from folks that believe in small business and believe that I will do the better job. I've been there now.
I got to check with you.
Play both sides.
Thank you. Returning now to our prepared question, hearing first from Mayor Matherly with a 60-second response to the following question. At what level do you feel the capital budget should be funded to address infrastructure needs in Alaska?
Nice. I work on the city budget. Say the question one more time, please.
Sure. At what level do you feel the capital budget should be funded to address infrastructure needs in Alaska?
To what level? Well, level enough to make sure that the roads are repaired and the potholes are fixed and all the infrastructure is there. To maybe fix the port at our neighbors, to fix the Ambler Road, with all those projects that we like. We have a very rich state. And the stop and start is not to stop. We stop when we start, we stop when we start. Let's complete something through all of it again. So if I understand the question correctly, we should fund it fully to make sure all those items that we've been talking about for 10, for 15, for 20 years are seen through to fruition. And we complete them and move on to the next task. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dibert, can you repeat the question? Yeah. At what level do you feel the capital budget should be funded to address infrastructure needs in Alaska?
Yes, as I have knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors this summer and talking to folks in District 31, the biggest concern is well, it would be education. I'm going to go there. People, they were worried about the 2 buildings closing in town and hearing that classroom sizes are larger. And I would definitely go down to Juneau and work in a bipartisan coalition to come up with, be creative and come up with solutions for this issue in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative LeBon.
Yes, thank you. I have experience with this. I've served on House Finance for the last 4 years. The minimum level is 150 million, so there's an exact number. But the realistic, sustainable number for capital budgets should be double that amount. Anything you put in the capital budget, you have to reconcile against the operating budget, PFD amount, how much you draw from the earnings reserve, and what is the price of Alaska oil through part of the pipeline, which, by the way, is 3/4 empty right now. So if you want a bigger capital budget, you need to increase revenue. And there's ways of doing that, and one of them is resource development, and one of them is supporting Willow and the Pitka projects up north, and also access to mining districts. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Nash.
So the biggest thing that I noticed as I was doing door knocking is the amount of people that can't afford to live here anymore. The amount of people that are worried about the indoctrination of our children, the amount of people that are worried about election integrity. There's a lot of things that are happening here. As far as the infrastructure, obviously we need that. You know, we need, I'm really new at this, so you guys, I really hope you don't laugh at my answers, but Fairbanks Interior needs a lot of help on every single angle as far as infrastructure. I don't exactly know how to do that, but I'm sure that we can figure out a way. So, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
I don't have a specific figure on the amount of the capital budget. It should be as much as this state can afford, given the revenues and the operating costs for providing essential services. I think we need to prioritize our capital projects and reach a consensus and then follow through and continue to work on those projects before we attempt to start anything new. I think the port in Anchorage is an important project for the state. And Newport in Nolan is certainly an important project for our future. We need a pipeline to bring the natural gas down to Fairbanks. And it's going to require obviously investment from overseas, but yeah, I think the people will ask us to invest as well.
Thank you. Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. As Representative LeBon mentioned, the minimum balance for the capital budget is $150 million. While inflation, high gas prices, and electric rates are crushing everyone in the interior. And when you underfund a capital budget, you rack up what's called deferred maintenance. So our state has almost over a $2 billion deferred maintenance obligation on existing facilities that are state-owned. And because of high inflationary pressure, in order to do needed maintenance today, you would have an incredibly higher cost on those facilities than you would have had in years past if you simply added a little bit more to the capital project budget for the purpose of deferred maintenance. So I tell folks our state needs structural reform when it comes to how we think about capital projects, and we cannot afford to make the mistakes of the past by underfunding our capital project budget and racking up $2 billion in deferred maintenance obligations. Thank you.
Mr. Jafre.
Well, I'm gonna have to copy from Kelly here. This is not exactly, my wheelhouse. I don't have great experience with it, but, we can't overcome it to the point where we're overdone. It's not something that we can approach simply. It's a pretty complex issue. And we have to look at it realistically, and sometimes the projects can have to be, put on hold. New projects may have to be put on hold. We have to be very careful on spending. There's a tremendous amount of debt. We're spending more now than we've spent in the history of this state, and we're seeing the lowest return on investment in some time. So we've got to be careful.
Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you. I was a longtime member of the House Finance Committee, where we did discuss this quite a bit. We also brought it into discussions on a long-term fiscal plan. We need roughly $300 million just to keep us at status quo and start chipping away at this huge backlog of projects we have. You're looking at projects that have been funded in previous years. This is not money that just came to the budget last year. It's money that came to the budget in 2014, 2015, 2016. So it's important to keep the eye on the ball to ensure that happens. Here's the fact of the matter is that right now we're spending about $200 million this year for our capital budget in undesignated general funds. That's money that we bring in through oil and gas, through fees, through fines, and we're getting over $1.2 billion from the federal government. That doesn't seem like a fair shake for the federal government. I'm glad that they do it, and we're going to have to continue to chip away at that ourselves. And that might mean new revenues, and it might mean a better stable level.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin first with Representative LeBon. You'll have 45 seconds to answer. How do you interpret the constitutional term for the benefit of all Alaskans?
Well, I guess my interpretation would be whatever actions the legislature takes, passing laws or approving a budget, needs to benefit all the needs and wants of all Alaskans. And that's our challenge in Juneau. This job is not easy. And when you go down to Juneau, you need to reconcile the needs and wants and keep in mind that the crafters of our Constitution have that expectation of the legislature to look at all the needs and wants of Alaskans. And when we approve a final budget, that meets and addresses those needs and wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nash. Would you like me to repeat the question? How do you interpret the constitutional phrase for the benefit of all Alaskans?
Well, if it benefits all Alaskans, then we should be doing it. Obviously, there's gonna be people that don't agree, because, you know, there's left and right and middle. But if it improves someone's livelihood, their lives, the people around them, then that's a benefit. Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence.
Well, I believe that phrase was referring to natural resources of the state. And I think what that means to me is that the natural resources of the state should be utilized for the benefit of the people of Alaska, and not necessarily the companies that are developing those resources. And I think that the revenue generated from those resources should be allocated in a fair and equitable way so that all people in this state benefit from those resources.
Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. Winston Churchill said that the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we find that we are spirits and not animals. And he said that there's something going on in time and space, and beyond time and space, which what we like to around spells duty. So I have 2 daughters, and I want them to have more opportunity and a brighter future than I have. So when I think about that term in the state constitution, I think about my obligation as a leader to ensure that the resources of this state are allocated in ways that ensure that the outcomes and the opportunities that they will have are greater than the ones that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jafre.
Yes, I have to agree with Will that we do have an obligation to future generations. And we have to make sure that special interest groups, regardless of what side they're calling on, aren't the people who are getting all the benefits from our resources. We need to be responsible with our development and be willing to do it. You know, we can't sit here and hire and have existing infrastructure. This is going to stand the test of time, right? We've got to get more development going. We've got to be willing to do it.
Thank you. Senator Kawasaki.
Thanks. In Article 8, sections 1 and 2, that's the statement of policy for the natural resources of the state to be used for the maximum use consistent with public interest. I think that's what you are referring to. Here's the challenge, and folks that come down to will find this out, but if you live in downtown Anchorage, your needs are different than the ones from where the oil comes. So the real truth is that you have to make sure that it's balanced, and you have a balanced approach. That you learn to get along with your colleagues, whether they live in an urban area or a rural area of the state where a lot of resources happen to be. And so, I'll say that in the cautionary note for folks that probably go down to Juneau, that it's important that you work closely with your caucus, with other members across the state to understand what they do.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
Well, at the city level, we had to make sure that all citizens of the city were provided for. So on the same level, it's the same as the state, Alaska first. The citizens first, Alaskans first, that's what that means to me. Everyone up here had good points, I can't argue with any of them. So my interpretation is Alaska first, take care of Alaskans. Not just the investors, we're glad you're here, but for the benefit of Alaskans. Everyone in here is an Alaskan, your kids, your grandkids, all of us. So that's what that means to me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Dibert.
Yes, I agree with many of the answers here on the stage and the needs and wants of all Alaskans. I've learned a lot this summer as I have the past couple of months. I have knocked and met many of my neighbors and had wonderful conversations with them, listening to their needs and their wants, what they why they live in our community, Fairbanks. And I feel like what I could bring to Juneau is I enjoy knocking and having these conversations, and I want to continue to have this connection and collaboration with the people of my community so that I can be a true voice for them.
Thank you. As a reminder to the audience, if you have a question you'd like to submit, Please complete the cards on your table and hold them up to be collected. Now on to our next question. We'll begin with Mr. Stapp, and you'll have 45 seconds to respond. Alaska is facing a shortage of employees across nearly all sectors of business. How will you support workforce development to ensure a solid base of workers are available to meet the job demands of today as well as the future?
Yeah, labor force participation rates, workforce development is another one of the big challenges that we're facing here in this period. So first and foremost, you need to have policies that are diverse enough to attract different types of workers to our state. And one of those things is individual liberty, individual freedom, and ensuring that from the state perspective, the proper investments that we are making in occupational training, working with our different partners and labor organizations in the private sector to ensure that quality jobs are available for folks. And also ensuring that Alaska remains a place of economic opportunity for people by ensuring that we practice fiscal discipline at the state level in order to improve our long-term fiscal ranking and outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jafre.
I said, lower taxes, less regulation, give these people more freedom to hire people. Pull back some of that red tape that's for housing. And to have a lot of fees and arbitrary funding they have to do. In order to get more people working, you have to have more time available to people who are willing to go after you. You can't just sit there and rest on your laurels. You have to go out there and put the work in.
Thank you. Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you very much for the question. Workforce development is something that we've tackled over the last couple of years in the Senate. This last year, we put $5 million into a workforce development training so that we can figure out what the jobs are going to be tomorrow. We were able to celebrate just a couple weeks ago now, the downtown center approach, where we needed nurses. Where do we get them? We can go them right here in town. Having a strong university is going to be able to do that, to bring people here so that they end up working. It's very difficult to find a lot of workers right now. First, we set these microphones up. I mentioned it just earlier before this meeting started. But the workforce training, making sure that they have the ability.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
All good points, but at the city level, what we do is we partner with Fairbanks Memorial Hospital, and they're helping us with childcare. So people who work in our dispatch center can use their services, because a lot of times we couldn't hire the people because there wasn't enough daycare. This goes to the parents in the room too. So I think by thinking out of the box and looking for really creative answers, that could also help your workforce. Besides that, things I mentioned before, clean, safe cities, lots of protections and good solid roads and good infrastructure can also help. But for the existing workers, think outside the box like the daycare, like what we did with the hospital, is going to pay dividends for us. Thank you.
Ms. Dibert.
Yes, all great points. And I've been an educator and a teacher here in Fairbanks. I believe education is key. I'm vested in, I have a son who's 17, just about to turn 18. And I want our students and our youth of our town to see themselves in the future working in our community. And I think that does start with education. I would definitely support. I went to the community college opening a couple weeks ago, and that's such a valuable resource in our community. And I attended UAF, and we need to fund UAF. That was the school I went to, and I've been here my whole life, and I think education is key.
Thank you. Representative LeBon.
Yeah, this requires a three-way partnership, the private sector, both union and non-union employers, K-12 education, and University of Alaska. 24 years ago, I was a newly elected school board member, and at that time, the school board chose to develop the Hutchinson Career Center into a standalone high school with trade training and education program. That was a game changer for our community. We need to support that type of education program. We can't lose sight for, the economic engine the University of Alaska is. We need to support their efforts to train our future workforce and support private employers doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nash.
Over the last 2 years, I think one of the biggest things is medical freedom. Every week, my group Interior Patriots, every Saturday, met with citizens all over the interior and Fort Wainwright, all the way out to Eielson. And they were being mandated to have the COVID-19 vaccine, along with students at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Students stopped going. People still are right now holding on to whether they can keep on having, working what they chose to do. Shortage of nurses. We have literally no healthcare here in Fairbanks for women due to the forced mandates of the COVID-19 vaccine that people did not want. So people have quit and they have left. People are staying at home because we're just handing them money, we are paying people to stay home. This is the only way it's gonna stop. We have to stop paying people to stay home. People need to have medical freedom.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
Reduction in our workforce is maybe the greatest threat to our economic prosperity right now. In the last 7 or 8 years, we've lost more people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, which is our main workforce, than have come up here. I think a lot of this has to do with our defined retirement plans for public employees should be converted back to a defined benefit. Otherwise, we're going to continue to lose teachers and public safety officers and firefighters after 4 or 5 years. We also need better schools, and we should look at college loan forgiveness.
Thank you.
Bringing them back.
Let's return to our candidate questions. We'll move to House Seat 32 candidates and begin with Mr. Stapp.
Thank you.
You have 15 seconds to ask your question to Mr. Lawrence, and Mr. Lawrence 30 seconds to answer.
All right, I'll try to be quick here. So everyone in this room is having lunch right now, and guess what? Everyone paid for that. So when we talk about pensions and indexing and inflation to education funding, somebody has to pay for that. So my question would be to Van, how would you propose the state pay for that?
Well, first of all, the state is already paying for a defined contribution plans. And there's been research showing that a defined benefit plan really doesn't cost any more or much more than the defined contribution plan. So we pay for it as we pay for other compensation to public employees through tax revenue.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Lawrence, you have 15 seconds to ask Mr. Stapp your question, and Mr. Stapp again 30 seconds to respond.
Mr. Stapp, would you be willing to join a Democratic-led bipartisan coalition if it was to the benefit of the city of Fairbanks?
Probably not. That's because I don't think it's been in the benefit of the city of Fairbanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to our rapid fire yes/no question. So candidates, please raise your yes/no cards to indicate your response. Everyone have their card? Here we go. First question. Would you consider yourself engaged with and knowledgeable of Fairbanks Chamber? Are you satisfied with how the PFD has been paid out in the previous last few years? Do you support a personal income tax? Will you be voting yes or no to the Constitutional Convention question on the November ballot? Should all operational departments within the state of Alaska be required to have and track metrics that indicate their productivity and effectiveness? Last question. Do you support a road in the Ambler mining district? Okay, thank you. Moving back to our prepared questions, this next one will have a 60 seconds response time, and Senator Kawasaki, you will begin. What is your strategy or vision for a sustainable long-term fiscal plan?
Thank you. I think I already answered this at the very beginning, but I was a member of the group. Again, it was both the House and Senate majorities and minorities, and then the Senate majorities and minorities. We spent 2 months on it to look at what the governor had proposed as far as a fiscal plan that would get us balanced and help me. It incorporated, as I mentioned earlier, a $300 million capital budget, the incumbent federal money. It also included a broad-based tax of some sort. There was questions, we never got around to whether it was going to be a sales tax or a partial income tax or some other thing. We had that stabilized EFD that was as high as we could make it, with a trigger that if we did better and succeeded in very tactical cuts within the legislature, that it would be higher. It also had to have elements like it had that continuity and had to be stabilized.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
Can I just raise one of these? Yes, that's tough because it sounds a 45-second answer or a 60-second answer. At the city level, I meet with every single department every single year. I look at their budget, what they need, what their wants are, what they need to maintain all the services across the city, and we fund it that way. If we spend it all, we don't spend it. What you do is you raise a dollar, you spend 50 cents or 75 cents and put some money in your savings account. I would approach it the same way at the state level. I've never served at the state, so I'm not going to make up an answer other than to say it's just like my checkbook at home and checkbook at the city. All needs have to be met. They have to be done responsibly with the goal of paying off any debt that the state has, which they do. We got to keep those payments going, of course. We got to do on our obligations. But if you're going to save a dollar, don't spend it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dibert.
Yes, regarding this, I would commit to being a part of the bipartisan coalition if elected in Juneau. I would work in a fiscal group and work on a plan that is fair for all Alaskans and that a majority of the legislators can agree on regarding this issue. And if we do need, if this plan does include quality education and continuing our essential services is important. I would also, if we need extra revenue coming in, I would support, I would go down to Juneau and hear from other legislators what extra revenue we need.
Thank you. Representative LeBon.
Yes, I think back 25 years ago, I was a board member of the Alaska State Chamber of Commerce. You know what our #1 priority was in 1996? Long-term fiscal plan. So this has been with us for like ever. And my comment about it would be simply this. We continue to be a resource state, and we will likely be a resource state for the next few years. So how do we put more oil in that pipeline? How do we support resource development? How do we improve access to our resources? If you want to craft a long-term fiscal plan, you need to add revenue from our resources and be very proactive and aggressive in doing so. And that means access, and that means you get after it. And that's how you craft long-term fiscal.
Thank you. Ms. Nash.
Once again, very hard. Our resources need to stay here. We need to stop. We need to have them. We need to be making the money off of it. We need to be using that towards our services. We need to cut all these 501c13s. I always say that backwards. There's over 8,000 in the state that just money's being thrown at. There's services that can go away and we can use that money for sustainability in our budget. But we've been saying that for years and years, and I don't have any idea, to be honest with you, because everybody's been asked this question for years and they haven't been able to do it, so that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
A long-term fiscal plan requires dependable, broad-based revenue to the state, which we really don't have now. Broadband revenue means that we look to all segments of the economy to contribute to the cost of government, not just the oil industry. We can increase, one of my part of my platform is to get fair royalties for all of our natural resources. We haven't had a change in mining laws, I think, since 1959, and I think we're shorting ourselves with regards to the revenue from that industry. We've got to come up with use fees and broad-based taxes that affect everybody to a lesser extent, so that no one segment of this population is bearing the brunt. And I believe that's the ticket to getting the long-term vision.
Thank you, Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. Well, I certainly believe that you can grow your way to problems through responsible resource development. However, I would add that last session, the Senate side of the body, the legislature passed one of the largest budgets in the history of the state. The state spend from the Senate was 2.5 times the per capita spend of the state of California, folks. If you want to go broke quickly, keep spending money like the Senate opted to spend money last session. Number one, I believe the state needs a long-term fiscal plan that includes a spending cap that's indexed to private sector performance-based metric. If you think people are leaving the state now due to inflation, high gas prices, and electric rates, imagine how fast people are going to leave when you start taxing everybody and you continue to want to spend all the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jafre.
Yeah, first thing that we need to look at is a lot of the economic impact of taking the PFD away from people. But the money is allocated already. It should be paid out. We owe people what we took them. If you want to get the economy up and running, the fastest way to do that is to get more resources out there. We need to be more thoughtful about spending. We need to stop allowing a bunch of sports barrel projects to go nowhere just because they are friends with this and that representative of Senator.
Thank you. And now to our last set of candidate questions from House Sheet 31. Ms. Nash, you'll go first. You may ask a question to Ms. Dibert or Representative LeBon. Please address which candidate you're sending your question. You have 15 seconds to ask it and 30 seconds to respond.
Maxine, are you for school choice since you attended the private Catholic school in Fairbanks, South Carolina?
I, as an educator, and a mother, and in our community, I support, we have many options, even within our Fairbanks School District, to offer to our families, and I have many of my own friends who have chosen to have their own children in the schools that we provide within our school district. And I do agree that
Thank you. Ms. Dibert, you may now ask your question to Representative LeBon or Ms. Nash.
yes, this is for Representative Bart LeBon. How is it more beneficial to Fairbanks for you to leave the bipartisan majority coalition to be in the minority?
The answer to that question is the House Finance Committee. I have served on the House Finance Committee both as a member of the majority coalition and as the minority coalition. Being on House Finance is how you benefit your community. I have the background, the education, the work experience, the life skills, if you will, to realize nomination and selection by both Republicans and Democrats to the House Finance Committee. I've proven that over the last 4 years with service on the House Finance Committee.
Thank you. Now Representative LeBon, your turn to ask your question.
And then we'll be to Maxine. You were endorsed by the Alaska Center, which is a environmental group based out of Anchorage. How do you reconcile that endorsement with resource development to include ANWR, the mining districts throughout Ambler Mining District and the roads of Ambler and the West Mining District?
Yes, I was endorsed by the Alaska Center, and I, being an Alaska native and having deep roots in Alaska, many of my family and family members are in villages in rural Alaska, and especially my family on the Yukon River, where the Yukon, this past season, we weren't able to fish and do our subsistence fishing, and this was the first time ever, and those types of things, I think working with a small community.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Jafre, we'll move to you. You'll answer our first question, 30-second response. If you could guarantee one piece of legislation to pass next year, what would it be and why?
It would be reforming the way that nonprofits are currently set up, investigated, and regulated. They have way too much anonymity and can get away with seemingly anything. No matter what production is shown, it seems like it's ignored, but somebody comes in the policy way. I'm sorry, but bringing a registered pedophile in the schools and looking at a 9 to 15-year-old boy is not something to be brought under the rug of an organization hiring someone knowing that history.
Senator Kawasaki.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. If you could guarantee one piece of legislation to pass next year, what would it be and why?
Thank you. As you know, the federal government has, there's a lot of money headed toward Fairbanks, headed toward the rest of the state and the federal government. We're very fortunate for people like Senator Dibert to be in a position to be able to help us. What's going to happen in the next 10 years is that we're going to have a boom, and we need to make sure that we get what we really need. We've been talking about it for decades. We need to lower the cost of energy within the interior and the rail. And the way to do that is going to be space heating and electricity through a pipeline.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
I'm going to agree with my opponent here, Senator Kawasaki. The price of fuel, the price of electricity is just way too high. We're losing people because of it, and when we spend, like Matt Wolfman and I, $120 just to fill our Dodge trucks, it's just way too much. So that has to be our priority in the next couple of years. There's lots of them, but if I could guarantee one thing, would be the price of energy, the cost of it.
Thank you. Ms. Dibert.
Yes, what I would write for the legislature is, I'm a teacher in our schools now, and we need to find a way. I would support teachers and retain teachers would be my main goal. Right now we have large classroom sizes. There's no subs, and the principal at my school is subbing for me now so that I could be here to be with you all, and we need to find a way to attract and retain teachers. So
Thank you. Representative LeBon.
Yes, I was pleased to pass 2 bills this last session that help with economic development, our banking community and regional health organizations through increased bonding that included the Alaska Railroad. The bottom line to what we do in Juneau is we pass a balanced budget. So my hope would be that once we get to Juneau, we craft a balanced budget that meets all the reasonable needs and wants of all Alaskans and does so in an effective manner.
Thank you. Ms. Nash.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes. If you could guarantee one piece of legislation to pass next year, what would it be and why?
Election integrity. We've got to get control of our elections. We've got to get control. We have to have the system revamped. It's not working. There's proof of election fraud from 2020. The voter rolls need to be cleaned out, as I've been canvassing my own way and sending out my own written out, mailers, and they're coming back undeliverable. It all needs to be cleaned up. And no more Dominion voting machines.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
The legislation, I think, is most needed in Juneau is legislation that will bring down the cost of energy for the interior. We have serious, we are at a serious handicap economically because of the high cost of energy. And that, I think, is the main issue that is facing this district.
Thank you. Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. Well, obviously I agree with the energy sentiment, but I don't want to carry everyone else up on the stage. So I would say legislation to tackle the high cost of healthcare and benefits in the state. Alaska has lots of regulatory issues when it comes to driving cost factors when it comes to not only medical care, but health insurance. And I tell folks, I care about boring things like that. So I would love to sponsor and support legislation to drive down healthcare costs.
Thank you. We'll now move to audience questions. These questions will be directed to specific candidates. Beginning with Ms. Dibert and Representative LeBon. The governor's task force on teacher recruitment and retention identified Alaska's teacher tier 3 retirement system as a major hurdle in both retaining and recruiting new certified teachers to Alaska. How do you propose to fix this pressing need and ensure our schools are able to hire and retain certified teachers? 30 seconds, beginning with Representative LeBon.
Yes. The want is a defined benefit program, but the need is to make sure that whatever we do is affordable. And that's where the debate will happen in Juneau. And this will get a lot of airtime in Juneau, is how do you help recruit educators with what program the state can afford. Here's a radical thought. Let's first fix the existing defined benefit program, which still remains underfunded before we roll out a new one.
Thank you. Ms. Dibert, same question.
Yes, I agree. I think we need to attract and retain teachers in our state by having retirement. We need to have, you know, when I first went into this field 20 years ago, it was so competitive in Fairbanks, there were no jobs. And I was told to go into look into other fields at UAF because of how competitive. And once we got rid of the defined benefit over the past 20 years or 10 years, our classrooms.
Thank you. Moving to House Seat 32 candidates. How will you work to ensure UAF can continue to provide the workforce of tomorrow and lead the industries of the future? 30 seconds. Please begin, Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. Well, I love our university. I was president of UAF Honor Society for History up there. I haven't actually finished my degree yet, so I need that place open so I can graduate. I support funding our university. I tell folks, look, you have to balance the needs and wants of the state. UAF is an economic driver for our community, and it's a key way to attract and retain our military members to live and continue to stay in our town when they leave the military. So,
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
The university is an economic engine for not just for this community, but for the entire state. New industries are being created because of the research being done at the university. I think the biggest mistake Governor Dunleavy made, he's made a lot of them, was to reboot the university, which is another way of saying are cutting the funding to such an extreme level. I would increase funding for the university.
Thank you. This next question is directed to Ms. Dibert. Your recent APOC filing showed that half of the money you raised is from out of state or from Anchorage. Who are you planning to represent, and have you made a coalition deal? 30-second response, please.
Yeah, I have, you know, answering all the questionnaires that I've gotten support from education programs from across the state, and American Indian programs that has boosted my name to get help, being a new candidate. Those have been helpful in bringing in funds for a grassroots, campaign that I'm running.
Thank you. This next question is directed to Senator Kawasaki and Mayor Matherly. Would you work to raise the BSA for public schools? Why or why not? 30-second response beginning with Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you. I have actually consistently been supportive of increasing the base student allocation. For folks that don't know, the base student allocation provides funds based per pupil. There's also transportation funds and a couple other things that are part of that calculation. The simple fact of the matter is in 2012, when the education bill was passed, that education amounts were stagnant after that time. That's 9 years without an increase. And if you're in the business, you can tell that is going to be a cut for future generations.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
Yes.
Okay,
That was the question. That's the necessary allocation. The answer is yes for everything that was just stated. Thank you.
thank you. This next question is directed to Senator Kawasaki. Please bear with me as I try to read some of this handwriting. This will be a 30-second response. Lisa, I might need your help with the last part of this. Senator Kawasaki, the 3/4 vote to access the constitutional budget reserve is the single biggest impediment to annual effective budgeting. Will you support an effort to repeal the CBR? 30 seconds.
So the constitutional budget reserve vote is in the Constitution. It would require the 2/3 of each house also agree to it. I haven't put a lot of thought to it personally. I think the CBR vote technically works and it works well. It has since its inception over 30 years ago.
Thank you. This next question is for several of the candidates here. The arts have long been part of a vibrant Fairbanks community. How will you support the arts in Juneau? 30 seconds beginning with Ms. Representative LeBon.
Yes, sure. The last budget cycle, I did vote yes on about a $500,000 contribution to the arts and was happy to be supportive of it.
Thank you. Mr. Stapp.
Thank you. Well, my wife is Alaska Native and she's an Alaska Native carver. She also went to school at UAF, by the way. So I'm a big supporter of the arts. And if you get a chance, my wife makes amazing Bentwood vodka, so you should check it out.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I think art is an important part of this, of a community or of the state. I believe that the state should provide financial support to the State Artists Association, Fairbanks Arts Association. I think it should be encouraged for businesses to do the same.
Thank you. Senator Kawasaki.
Yeah, thank you. As stated, the arts are something that bring people out of their homes, that keep people involved and invigorated during really cold winters. I've been a member of the Fairbanks Symphony Association for many years, supporting the arts that way. During my tenure in the legislature, we did increase the ask and give to the Alaska State Council of the Arts. I supported that measure, and many of the folks who were here in the interior delegation did as well. We need to encumber all the federal funds that come in.
Thank you. Mayor Matherly.
I 100% support the arts. Spent a lifetime participating in the arts and plays, playing music, playing drums, attending plays, attending symphonies. It's very important. In fact, one of the first things I might be able to do, because I respect Jude Rogers so much, is declare it's something that they're donating. We call it a Jude Rogers Scholarship, Art Scholarship, just because of their tireless efforts for the arts. But I support them 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Nash.
As a hairdresser and as a painter myself, absolutely. It's a great way to express yourself. It's good for those long winter nights. It's absolutely in support of that.
Thank you. This next question is for all the candidates, and you will grab your yes and no cards, please. Should the state of Alaska plan for and provide direct services for our elders by funding pioneer homes? Yes or no? Thank you. And last question, this question is directed to Mr. Lawrence. Would you join a Republican-led coalition if it was for the benefit of all Alaskans? To be fair, it's a yes or no. Would you like to, yes? Okay. Would you join a Republican-led coalition if it was for the benefit of all Alaskans? Yes, sir.
Would it go? Certainly, if it's a benefit to the interior, yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving away from audience questions. Each candidate will now have 1 minute to answer our closing question. We'll begin in the reverse order from which we started, beginning with Mayor Matherly. Given your experience and knowledge, why should the voters of Fairbanks and the interior vote for you? Please be specific.
Thank you. Well, I've worked really hard to not be the mayor, but be your mayor. I have communicated, whether it be on social media or personal phone calls, to work for you. You've done it 4 consecutive times with the city, 2 on the city council, 2 as mayor. I will work with the same enthusiasm when I get to Juneau. I know that it's important that I represent the interior of Alaska. I'm a good communicator, and if I'm elected, I promise I will work very, very hard for you. You have to vote on November the 8th. I stand Senate strong, and I'm ready for the best as I serve you. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kawasaki.
Yeah, thank you for this forum today. Many of you guys know me. I was a member of the chamber since 1998. I served on the city council for 6 years in local government. I serve now in the Senate for the last 4 years, and I'm asking for a second term, humbly asking for a second term. I grew up here, graduated from school here. Being an effective communicator means getting out there, means knocking on doors, not just when you want to vote, but when you want to tell them what you did last year. Folks who know me know that I'm a hard worker, that I will burn shoe leather just to meet people, come to every public event that I possibly can to spread the word about what's going on in Juneau. It's a part-time legislature, and I feel that we work 70 or 80 hours a week as a part-time legislator. But that's what people demand right now. And people are uncertain and uneasy about the future. I plan to change that. And I hope that you will listen and take that and support me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jafre.
Yes, I've been a voting activist for a very long time. I'm a staunch conservative. I've campaigned in weather that has been absolutely hellacious. I have faced threats of lawsuits for bringing information to light that eventually led to the outing of that member of the board. I'm not going to lie to you and say I agree with you just to make you happy. But I will tell you that if you've got a problem and I can do something about it, I'm going to sit down with it. I'm going to fight for the Second Amendment. I'm going to fight for traditional values. I'm going to fight for a full PFD and tax pay. And I am not going to let rose-colored glasses and nostalgia blind me to corruption and then make excuses and continue to support groups who practice utter debauchery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stapp.
Well, thank everyone for allowing me to be here today. So I came to Fairbanks when I enlisted in the Army. I was stationed on Fort Wainwright. I served in the infantry. I was a paratrooper. I did 2 deployments to Iraq. I was wounded combat fighting for our freedoms. So unlike many of the folks who left this state, who are in their prime working age, I opted to stay here because I have 2 daughters and I fight for their future in our town. So I'm running not because of myself, but because I believe in public service and civic duty. And I want my kids to have opportunity in our town. And that's the primary driver of my decision-making process to try to make a better Alaska tomorrow than currently exists today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
The voters in District 32 should vote for me because my experience and my background will make me a better legislator than either of my opponents. I moved to Fairbanks in 1978. I've owned and operated a small business since 1980. I helped raise my daughter here. I have deep roots in this community. As a lawyer, I have represented and advised hundreds of small businesses in